Dr. Emily Brooks hadn't slept in 36 hours, but the tremor in her hands came from something else entirely. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the UN General Assembly, she watched the alien ships hanging in the New York sky, like obsidian tears frozen in mid-fall. Their presence made the chamber's oak podium feel absurdly primitive. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "The Galactic Council's ultimatum isn't just about governance. It's about the fundamental nature of human consciousness." The chamber stirred. Most of the delegates had already made up their minds: submit to council rule or face complete isolation. They didn't understand what that truly meant. In the visitors' gallery, her 16-year-old daughter Katie adjusted her illegal smartphone, continuing to live stream despite the council's ban on unauthorized broadcasts. Emily caught her eye and managed a small smile. Katie had her father's stubbornness. Heaven rest his soul. And right now, that defiant streak might be humanity's best chance at understanding what they faced. "The council species are all telepathic," Emily continued, bringing up a holographic display of mural patterns. "Their entire civilization is built on the direct transmission of thought. They see our reliance on verbal and written communication as primitive, dangerous even. But they're missing something crucial about human consciousness." A low hum filled the chamber. The delegates looked up as one of the alien ships passed overhead, its shadow darkening the room. Emily's hands finally stopped shaking. Fear crystallized into purpose. "They don't understand that our primitive methods of communication have given us something they lack: creativity, innovation, the ability to." The holographic display flickered and died. Throughout the chamber, tablets went dark. Phones fell silent. Katie's lead string cut out mid-broadcast. The council had flexed its technological muscles, demonstrating just how easily they could shut down human technology. But Emily smiled. "Thank you," she said into the startled silence. "You've just proved my point." She pulled a piece of chalk from her pocket, an archaic tool that had drawn questioning looks from her colleagues earlier, and approached the chamber's dark stone wall. "When humans lose one way to communicate," she began drawing, quick, confident strokes, "we find another, and another, and another." The chalk scratched against the stone, drawing the council ships, but transformed into a child's floating balloons. "We turn limitations into art, silence into music, darkness into light." A murmur ran through the chamber as delegates recognized what she was doing. Some pulled out paper notebooks, relics from a pre-digital age that had suddenly become relevant again. Others began whispering to their neighbors, old-fashioned information transfer that the council couldn't block. "The council thinks shutting down our technology will isolate us," Emily continued, adding details to her impromptu artwork. "They don't realize that humans wrote epic poems before we had alphabet, built empires before we had telephones, sparked revolutions with nothing but whispers and hand signals." The chamber doors burst open. 3 council representatives glided in, their crystalline forms refracting the dim light. Their telepathic message broadcast directly into every human mind present. "CAC, the is primitive display." Emily turned to them, chalk still raised. "No." Katie stood up in the gallery, phone held high despite its darkened screen. Then another delegate stood, and another. Silent defiance spreading like a wave. The lead council representative shifted color, bands of angry red pulsing through its crystalline form. "Humanity, will sig unite or be silenced." Emily's chalk scratched across the stone one final time, completing her drawing. The council ships transformed into a flock of birds taking flight. "You can't silence humanity," she said quietly. "You can only teach us to speak in new ways." The council representatives withdrew, their departure carrying an implicit threat. As the chamber doors closed behind them, Emily looked up at her daughter, who was already scribbling furiously in a paper notebook. Katie caught her eye again and nodded. The live stream might be down, but she'd found another way to spread the word. The silence was coming, but humanity was ready to make it roar. Colonel James "Thunder" Martinez stood at the Pentagon's window, watching his reflection as banks of screens died behind him. One by one, the global command center went dark, each failed system another reminder of the Council's power. His scarred hand rested on a yellowed piece of paper, his grandfather's letter from the Silent Service, written aboard a submarine during the Cold War. "Sir," Lieutenant Parker's voice cracked with strain. "NASA reports all satellites are going offline. The Council is systematically." "Let them." Martinez turned, his weathered face calm. The emergency lights cast the war room in a red glow that reminded him of submarine operations. "They expect us to panic, to fight, to reveal ourselves as the primitives they think we are." Dr. Emily Brooks burst through the door, her daughter Katie close behind. Both carried notebooks filled with hastily scrawled observations from the UN confrontation. "Colonel, we have less than an hour before they demand our answer." Martinez nodded, unfolding his grandfather's letter. "Doctor, your chalk demonstration got me thinking. About submarines, about silence, about how humanity's greatest victories often came from what we didn't do." Katie's eyes widened. "You want us to go silent? Voluntarily?" "All of us," Martinez said, his voice carrying across the now hushed war room. "Every broadcast, every transmission, every signal." He turned to the few still functioning screens, not because they forced us, but because we chose to. Emily stepped forward, chalk-stained fingers tracing patterns on her notebook. The Council species evolved with telepathy. They never needed to develop alternative communications, but humans. A smile crossed her face. "We've been finding ways to speak without words since we painted on cave walls." Martinez spread a paper map across the central table. "Old school. No electronics. We have military units trained in light signals, ship captains who know flag communications, Native Americans who can speak volumes with smoke signals. Hell, we've got teenagers who can have entire conversations in emoji." Katie pulled out her dead phone, then grinned. "And we've got millions of people who are really going to enjoy proving these telepathic snobs wrong." The war room filled with nervous laughter, tension breaking for a moment. Martinez touched his grandfather's letter again. "The Silent Service taught us something vital. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's strength." "How do we coordinate it?" Lieutenant Parker asked. "We've got less than an hour to inform the entire planet." "We don't need an hour." Emily's eyes lit up. "We need 30 seconds of every working communication device we have left. One final message, broadcast in every language." Martinez nodded. "Lieutenant, patch me through to every remaining channel. Dr. Brooks, help me write something that will make history." The next 20 minutes were a blur of activity. Paper notes passed hand to hand. Runners dispatched to nearby military units. Katie orchestrating a chain of text messages that would reach millions before the phones went dark. At exactly 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Colonel James Martinez stood before a single working camera in the Pentagon's war room. His voice, translated into 300 languages, reached across the planet. "People of Earth, the Council believes they can silence us. They mistake our methods of communication for weakness, so let us show them our strength. At midnight, Eastern Time, humanity goes silent, not because they demanded it, but because we choose it. Watch for the lights. Listen for the silence. Remember who we are." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "And get ready to make some noise without making a sound." At midnight, darkness swept across the globe. Cities dimmed. Broadcasts ceased. Phones fell silent. Satellites went dark. The Council's representatives watched in confusion as humanity voluntarily did exactly what they had threatened to force upon them. Their telepathic demands for explanation went unanswered. Their scans showed no hidden transmissions, no secret frequencies, just silence. But in that silence, something was happening. In New York, Emily Brooks watched as her daughter joined thousands of teenagers in Central Park, their phones raised to the sky, flashlights blinking in perfect unison. On Navy ships across the world, signal lamps began to dance. In the Australian outback, the first signal fires began to burn. Humanity had made its choice. The conversation was just beginning. Mike Reynolds stood atop the Bellagio, his domain of lights and lasers spread out before him like a sleeping giant. Vegas had always been his canvas, but tonight it would become something more. Something revolutionary. "Power grids ready, boss," his assistant radioed, one of the few short-range devices still functioning. All casinos standing by. Mike checked his old-school wristwatch, the kind that didn't need electricity to tell time. 3 days into humanity's self-imposed silence, and already patterns were emerging. The Council's ships still hovered, watching, waiting for chaos that never came. "Light it up," he commanded. "Sequence Alpha." The strip erupted in a choreographed display of light and shadow. Not the usual gaudy celebration of excess, but something precise. Mathematical. The Luxor's beams split into pulsing patterns. The Bellagio's fountains danced in perfect synchronization, with color-changing LEDs. Each casino's display formed part of a larger message, visible from space. Across the city, people gathered to watch. They understood now. After 72 hours of practice, most could read the basic light language Mike had developed with Dr. Emily Brooks' linguistic team. Today's NELUS, the lights spelled out. Resistance strong. Council confused. Mike smiled as his phone buzzed. Short-range text still worked within city limits. It was Katie Brooks, the teenager who'd become their best propagandist. "Dad says check out Times Square. They're copying your system." He pulled out his binoculars, focusing on one of the massive screens still functioning in emergency mode. Sure enough, New York's lights were dancing in the same patterns. Within hours, every major city would follow suit. "Mr. Reynolds." A new voice crackled over his radio. "We've got movement. Council ship approaching." The crystalline vessel descended through the clouds, hovering directly above the strip. Its presence should have been threatening. Instead, Mike felt a surge of pride. They were watching, learning, and completely unable to stop what was happening. The ship's telepathic broadcast washed over the city. "CAC is primitive displays." Mike keyed his radio. "Everyone hold position." Continue the sequence. Below, thousands of tourists and locals alike turned their phones' flashlights to the sky, adding their own light to the message. The Council ship's demand had only strengthened their resolve. "Sir," his assistant's voice was excited now. "Signal from Dr. Brooks. The telepaths. They can't process rapid light changes. Their evolution never required it. The patterns actually hurt their eyes." Mike's grin widened as he triggered Sequence Beta. The Stratosphere Tower became a lighthouse, its beams sweeping precise arcs that carried encoded messages to other cities. Each casino's lights pulsed in rhythms that looked random to the Council, but carried clear meaning to human observers. "They cannot see the patterns," the lights proclaimed. "We AAVFOUND, their body. Yes." The Council ship retreated, its crystalline surface reflecting the cityscape in confused fractals. As it rose, Mike caught movement on other buildings. People with mirrors, reflecting sunlight in precise patterns. Children with glow sticks dancing in synchronized groups. Even the traffic below had organized itself into meaningful flows. His radio crackled again. Katie's voice this time. "Mike, the ham radio network is picking up similar reports worldwide. Beijing is using lanterns. Mumbai's got synchronized fireworks. London's using their Thames barrier to reflect light and patterns." He checked his watch again. Right on schedule. Humanity had spent millennia developing ways to communicate. The Council thought taking away electronics would devolve them into chaos. Instead, it had sparked a renaissance of human ingenuity. "Begin Sequence Gamma," he ordered, watching as the strip transformed once more. This pattern was special, a combination of light and shadow that would be recorded by sympathetic alien species and broadcast across the galaxy. A message not just of defiance, but of invitation. The lights spoke clearly. We will tehu to see the muses in silence. Above, the stars seemed to twinkle in response, or perhaps it was other cities, sending their own messages into the night. In the darkness humanity had created, a new kind of light was spreading. And the council could only watch, unable to silence what they couldn't understand. Jessica Wade watched Mars Colony's entertainment district power down through the reinforced windows of her penthouse office. The massive screens that usually projected Earth's latest shows, music and art flickered and died. Right on schedule. Protocol Encore was proceeding exactly as planned. "Ma'am," her assistant's voice came through an old intercom system. "The Regelian cultural attaché is demanding to speak with you. She's turning purple." Jessica straightened her jacket, touching the paper notebook in her pocket, a gift from Dr. Emily Brooks before she'd left Earth. "Sent her in." The Regelian burst through the door in a swirl of chromatic distress, her normally blue skin indeed shifting through various shades of purple. "This is unconstitutional. You can't just terminate our licensing agreements." Actually, Jessica retrieved a printed contract from her desk. Section 7, Paragraph 12 clearly states that in the event of an interstellar communication embargo, all licensing agreements become null and void. The Council's actions triggered this clause. But the Regelian skin paled to a sickly lavender. "Our people are addicted to your entertainment. Do you know how many are suffering withdrawal from something called cat videos alone?" Jessica kept her expression neutral, but inside she was smiling. The Council had never understood that humanity's primitive broadcast culture had become the galaxy's primary entertainment source. They'd been too focused on telepathic communication to notice how human creativity had infiltrated every aspect of alien society. Her desk phone, landline, deliberately archaic, rang. "Excuse me," she told the Regelian. "I need to take this." It was Katie Brooks, calling from the secure line in Vegas. "Jess, Mike Reynolds' light show just got picked up by 3 different alien entertainment networks. They're calling it visual poetry. Even the telepathic species are watching, even though it gives them headaches." "Perfect." Jessica glanced at the Regelian, who was now anxiously watching Mars Colony's last active entertainment screen fade to black. "How's the archive distribution going?" "Better than we hoped. When Dad cut off access to the main entertainment servers, the aliens started trading bootleg copies of human shows. Some guy on Alpha Centauri sold his starship for the complete series of Friends." The Regelian was pacing now, skin cycling through shades of distress. Jessica held up a finger, "Just one moment," and continued her conversation. "Any word from the Council? They're trying to promote their own entertainment, pure telepathic experiences. But apparently, it's like watching paint dry. Turns out transmitting raw thoughts isn't actually entertaining." "Who knew?" Jessica ended the call and turned back to the Regelian. "I apologize for the interruption. You were saying something about withdrawal symptoms." "Please," the alien diplomat's skin had settled on a desperate shade of mauve. "Name your price. The Regelian Empire will pay anything to restore access to human entertainment. I'm afraid it's not about money." Jessica stood, walking to her window. Below, she could see dozens of alien ships docked at the colony's port, entertainment distributors from across the galaxy, all facing the same crisis. It's about recognition, understanding. The Council calls us primitive because we use crude methods of communication. But those methods produce the art, music, and stories that your people can't live without. The Regelian skin shifted to a thoughtful blue-green. "You planned this. Let's just say we were prepared." Jessica pulled out her notebook, showing the careful calculations. Humanity's entertainment exports account for 80% of all cultural content consumed in Council space. We didn't just create content. We created context, meaning. something telepathic communication alone could never achieve. Her phone rang again. This time, it was Colonel Martinez. "Wade, it's working. 3 council member species have just filed formal protests. They're demanding the embargo be lifted." Jessica smiled at the Rigelian. "Tell me, Ambassador, how would your government feel about officially supporting Earth's independence? In exchange for, say, exclusive first access when we resume broadcasting?" As the alien diplomat's skin shifted to eager shades of gold, Jessica thought about Emily Brooks' chalk drawing at the UN. Sometimes the most powerful messages weren't spoken or thought. They were felt. And right now, the galaxy was feeling humanity's absence in ways the Council had never anticipated. The silence was becoming deafening. Ambassador Derek Washington had seen countless alien species experience emotions, but never quite like this. The artisty delegate before him was literally weeping colors, their bioluminescent tears creating a puddle of melancholy blues and purples on his office floor. "Please," the alien whispered, their translator struggling to convey the depth of emotion in their voice. "My people, we cannot create anymore. Without human art, without your stories, our own creativity is diminishing." Derek glanced at his tablet, one of the few still connected to the secure diplomatic network, where Colonel Martinez's latest report glowed. 15 more cases of human withdrawal syndrome, documented in the past hour alone. The symptoms were becoming impossible for the Council to ignore. "Tell me more," he said, activating the hidden recording device Dr. Brooks had designed. Every testimony strengthened their position. "We thought we understood communication." The artiste's skin rippled with remembered shame. "Our species can literally project emotions through color and light. But humans, you transform emotions into something more. Your movies make us feel things we've never felt. Your music creates colors we've never seen." A soft chime interrupted them. The massive window of Derek's lunar embassy office automatically tinted as Earth moved into view. Right on cue, the planet's night side began to sparkle with Mike Reynolds' coordinated light show, a symphony of Morse code, binary, and the new light language that was spreading across human space. The artisti pressed against the glass, their entire body pulsing with wonder. "Even now, in your silence, you create beauty we cannot fathom." Derek's tablet buzzed. Katie Brooks had just uploaded new footage from Times Square. He turned the screen so the artisti could watch. Thousands of humans moved in perfect synchronization, their bodies forming living patterns that transmitted messages visible from orbit. No technology, no words, just pure human coordination. "The Council believes they're punishing us," Derek said quietly. "They don't understand that humans evolved to communicate through any means necessary. Take away our phones, we use lights. Take away power, we use movement. Take away everything, we'll use the stars themselves." His office door opened. Jessica Wade strode in, still looking immaculate despite having just completed the fastest Earth-Moon transit on record. "Ambassador, it's happening. The Rigelians are officially experiencing mass creative collapse. Their entertainment industry is down 92% without human content to remix and respond to." The artisti's colors shifted to shocked oranges and reds. "The Rigelians? But they're one of the Council's strongest supporters." "Were," Jessica corrected, laying a printed report on Derek's desk. "Their cultural ministry just declared a state of emergency. Turns out telepathic species rely on human creativity more than they knew. We don't just entertain the galaxy. We inspire it." Derek's tablet chimed again. This time it was Colonel Martinez, his message brief but crucial. "Light Brigade mission successful. Solar observation stations confirmed. The pattern was visible from Saturn." The Light Brigade had been Martinez's most audacious plan yet, coordinating every human settlement, ship, and station in the solar system to create a message written in light across space itself. The Council couldn't silence that. The artisti was practically vibrating now, their colors a kaleidoscope of revelation. "My species will withdraw from the Council," they announced. We cannot support the silencing of creativity itself. That makes 7, Jessica noted, updating her paper ledger. 3 more council species and we'll have a majority. Derek stood, watching Earth's lights dance below. Each pattern carried meaning beyond words, beyond thought. Humanity hadn't just adapted to silence. They transformed it into a new form of art. His tablet displayed one final message. From Dr. Brooks. Katie's documentary is ready. When the council breaks, and they will break, we'll show the galaxy how humanity turns censorship into symphony. The artisti touched the window once more, their colors matching the patterns flowing across Earth's night side. We thought we were punishing you with silence, they said softly. Instead, you taught us that true communication transcends all barriers. Derek smiled. The silence wasn't just a protest anymore. It had become humanity's greatest performance. A demonstration that creativity couldn't be contained by any force in the galaxy. And the audience was growing by the hour. Master Zix had infiltrated 17 civilizations during their long career as a council spy. None had ever made them question their own superiority. Until now. Their crystalline form, perfectly mimicking the human street lamp, watched as Katie Brooks danced through Times Square with her flash mob army. The council had sent Zix to document humanity's descent into primitive chaos. Instead, they were witnessing evolution in real time. Katie's dancers moved with precise, deliberate steps. To untrained eyes, it looked like simple entertainment. But Zix's enhanced sensors detected patterns within patterns. The dancers were transmitting military coordinates, weather reports, and stock market data through their movements. Next group, places. Katie's voice carried across the square. She'd grown from a teenager with an illegal phone into something far more dangerous, an architect of humanity's new communication network. Zix's crystalline structure vibrated with frustration. They'd followed her across 3 continents, watching her transform street performers into signal carriers, graffiti artists into news broadcasters, and children's games into data transfer protocols. Their neural transmitter pulsed. REQUEST STATUS UPDAT. But how could they explain this to the council? How could purely telepathic beings understand a species that had turned their very limitations into strengths? A shadow fell across their position. Dr. Emily Brooks stood before the street lamp that wasn't a street lamp, her chalk-stained fingers trailing through the air. Beautiful evening for people watching, isn't it? Zix froze. Impossible. Their disguise was perfect. You know, Emily continued conversationally, human children learn to recognize patterns before they learn to speak. We see faces in clouds, stories in stars, meaning in movement. Did the council really think we wouldn't spot a crystalline being pretending to be a street lamp? Around the square, Katie's dancers continued their intricate performance. But now Zix noticed they were gradually surrounding their position. The question is, Emily said, what will you tell your superiors? That humanity hasn't regressed at all. That we've created a communication network your telepathic scanning can't detect because it exists in movement, light, and rhythm. Zix shifted form, revealing their true crystalline structure. You knew I was here all along. Of course. Katie had approached, her dancers moving in perfect synchronization behind her. Why do you think we let you follow me? Every performance was a demonstration. Every chase revealed another layer of our adaptation. In the sky above, the council's ships hung like dark stars, but they were blind to the conversation happening in plain sight below them. Zix watched as a group of children played hopscotch nearby, their game pieces falling in deliberate patterns. They're coordinating satellite movements, Emily explained. Those teenagers with skateboards. They're transmitting medical data between hospitals. The hot dog vendor's clue. Stock market updates. Impossible, Zix whispered, their crystal form flickering with disbelief. Your species is not capable of such coordination without technology. Katie laughed, her dancers mirroring her movement in a ripple effect that Zix suddenly realized was transmitting their entire conversation to watchers across the city. We built pyramids before we had calculators, created democracy before we had phones, mapped the stars before we had computers. What you see as primitive, Emily added, we see as foundational. Each limitation forced us to innovate. Every barrier taught us a new way to connect. Zix's neural transmitter pulsed again, more urgently. Report status immediately. But they hesitated. How could they explain that humanity's silence had made them louder than ever? That their supposed primitive state had revealed capabilities that even the Council's telepathic technologies couldn't match. You have a choice, Katie said, her dancers now completely encircling them. You can tell the Council what they want to hear, that we're regressing, failing, breaking apart, or you can tell them the truth, that humanity has turned silence into strength. Above them, Mike Reynolds' latest light show began, transforming the city's skyline into a cascade of meaning. Each flash and shadow carried messages that Zix could detect but couldn't decipher. They made their decision. Show me everything, Zix said. Show me how humanity speaks without speaking. Katie smiled, extending her hand to the crystalline spy. Welcome to the dance. The Council's emergency session chamber had never witnessed anything like it. Ambassador Derek Washington stood at the center, surrounded by crystalline beings and energy forms of 100 alien species, while the Artisti delegation painted the air with colors of revolution. The evidence is undeniable. The Artisti representative's voice rang out, their skin pulsing with passionate crimsons. Master Zix's report confirms what we've all suspected. Humanity hasn't been silenced. They've transcended traditional communication itself. The Council leaders' crystalline forms vibrated with barely contained fury. Their telepathic broadcast hammered against every mind present. This is irrelevant. Humanity remains primitive. Primitive. Jessica Wade stepped forward, her heels clicking against the crystal floor. She'd fought for the right to attend this session, bringing with her something the Council feared more than any weapon. Proof. Display archive, she commanded. The chamber's walls shimmered, displaying scenes from across Earth and its colonies. Mike Reynolds' light symphonies dancing across cities. Katie Brooks' flash mobs transmitting data through dance. Children's games carrying military coordinates. Street art shifting throughout the day to broadcast news. In 3 months, Jessica continued, humanity has created 12 new languages, 26 methods of data transmission, 100 ways to share stories without speaking a word. She turned to the assembled delegates. Meanwhile, your worlds are experiencing creative collapse. Your entertainment industries are failing. Your people are losing the ability to innovate. The chamber erupted in telepathic chaos. Delegates projected emotions and thoughts in a storm of competing signals. But through it all, Colonel Martinez's voice cut clear and sharp from the entrance. Now, the chamber walls went dark. Every screen, every hologram, every telepathic amplifier, dead. In the sudden silence, something new emerged. Through the chamber's crystal windows, Earth became visible, and it was dancing. Cities lit up in perfect synchronization. Orbital platforms moved in celestial ballet. Even the lunar colonies pulsed with coordinated light and shadow. Humanity's greatest performance, orchestrated across space itself. By trying to silence us, Dr. Emily Brooks' voice came through hidden speakers. Analog technology, the Council had dismissed as beneath notice. You've forced us to remember something vital. Communication isn't about the method. It's about the meaning. The Artisti delegation began to move, their bodies and colors matching the rhythms coming from Earth. Other species joined in, adding their own movements to the growing symphony of silence. Enough. The Council leader's telepathic shout cut through the chamber. This proves nothing except humanity's stubborn. They stopped. Through the windows, a new light show had begun. But this one was different. It spoke in telepathic patterns, constructed entirely from synchronized light and motion. Humanity had learned to speak the Council's language, without telepathy. Katie's voice joined her mother's. Every limitation you placed on us became a new opportunity. Every barrier sparked innovation. You tried to isolate us from the galaxy. Instead, you helped us show the galaxy a new way to connect. The chamber's power returned, but it didn't matter anymore. Half the council delegates were already moving in patterns learned from human dancers. Species that had never communicated except through telepathy were discovering the joy of physical expression. Master Zix materialized in the center of the chamber, their crystalline form refracting the light from Earth in complex patterns. I move to officially end the embargo, they announced. Not for humanity's sake, but for ours. We thought we were punishing them. Instead, they were teaching us. The vote was not even close. As delegates raised their appendages, tentacles, or energy fields in overwhelming support, Ambassador Washington smiled. Humanity had won not through force or technology, but by turning silence itself into a revolution. Signal the Light Brigade, he whispered into his analog communicator. Tell them to begin the celebration sequence. As humanity's response to their victory lit up the solar system, the council leaders could only watch. They had tried to silence a species that had spent its entire existence learning to speak in every way possible. And in doing so, they had helped humanity find its loudest voice yet. Katie Brooks stood in her mother's old spot at the UN General Assembly, but this time the chamber brimmed with both human and alien delegates. Above them, through the restored transparent dome, the council's ships now hovered not as threats, but as participants in what historians would later call the Great Orchestration. 3 months ago, she began, her voice carrying across species and space. We chose silence. Today, we choose to speak again, but not just with words. Mike Reynolds, stationed at his command center in Vegas, gave the signal. Across Earth, every city blazed to life. But this time, they weren't just communicating. They were celebrating. The light patterns carried messages in every language ever created, from ancient hieroglyphs to binary code to the new forms born in darkness. Humanity, Dr. Emily Brooks continued from her position at Mission Control, has always been defined not by our limitations, but by how we transcend them. Her hands moved in the gesture language developed during the silence, automatically translated by the new hybrid communicators that merged human creativity with alien technology. Colonel Martinez's Light Brigade began their final performance. Ships and stations across the solar system moved in perfect formation, their lights and positions telling humanity's story from the first cave paintings to the stars themselves. In Mars Colony, Jessica Wade activated Protocol Final. The galaxy's entertainment networks lit up with 3 months of stored human creativity. Art, music, and stories created in silence, each carrying echoes of humanity's unshakable spirit. We learned something in the darkness. Katie continued as alien delegates swayed to rhythms they were only beginning to understand. True communication isn't about having the most advanced technology or the most direct method. It's about finding countless ways to share who we are. The Artisti delegation erupted in symphonic colors, their bodies reflecting the light show above. Master Zix, now Earth's official liaison to the Council, shifted their crystalline form to join the celebration, refracting light in patterns that merged telepathic and human expression. Ambassador Washington stepped forward, carrying something that made the alien delegates lean in with curiosity, a simple piece of chalk. During our silence, we remembered every way we've ever spoken. He began to draw on the chamber's wall, just as Emily had months ago. Through art, the chalk sparked, leaving trails of light that danced through the air. Through movement, Katie's global flash mob began their synchronized performance, visible from space. Through light, Mike Reynolds unleashed his masterpiece, transforming every human settlement from Earth to the Kuiper Belt into a coordinated display of light and shadow. Through story, Jessica Wade released the first broadcast of Katie's documentary. The Year Earth Spoke Loudest, simultaneously translated into every known form of communication in the galaxy. And through silence itself, Emily activated the new quantum communication network, developed by studying how humans had learned to speak without words. The council leaders, watching from their ships above, finally understood. Their attempt to silence humanity had instead sparked a renaissance of communication that would transform galactic civilization. Already, their own people were learning to express themselves in ways their telepathic evolution had never imagined necessary. "We chose silence," Katie concluded, as Earth performed its symphony of light and motion around her. "But in that silence, we found our true voice. And now," she smiled as human and alien delegates joined in the celebration, their movements and expressions merging into something entirely new. "We invite the galaxy to join our dance." The celebration lasted for days, each moment broadcast across the stars as an example of what was possible when different species learned to truly communicate. The Council's embassy on Earth was converted into the Galactic Institute of Communication Arts, with Katie as its youngest director and Master Zix as her eager assistant. Cities kept their light language as an alternate form of expression. Flash mobs became recognized diplomatic events. Children grew up learning to speak in movement and light alongside their native tongues. And if you looked up at the right moment, you might see the lights of human civilization dancing across the solar system, telling stories in a language born of silence, stories that would echo across the galaxy forever. After all, humanity had learned that the most powerful messages often came not from what was said, but from how you chose to say nothing at all.